Cyber season is in full swing with our pals Isotope and Native Instruments.
Get huge discounts on everything from Guitar Rig 7,
Complete 14 bundles,
and one of our favorites here at the Cult and Culture Podcast,
Ozone 11 EQ. Go to isotope.com
and nativeinstruments.com
to feast on the audio goodness. Yum.
You can also get additional savings on other softwares by using the code
RUIN10.
DistroKid now also has a motherfucking app. The DistroKid app is available for iOS and Android. You can download it at distrokid.com/app/, or you can get it in the App Store.
Planet B.
Welcome to episode 5 of the Cult and Culture Podcast by Planet B. This episode features Adam Gnade, author, musician, writer, punk, farmer, weirdo, etc.
The thing that I wanted to start off with is, well, first of all, like, can you just give everybody a synopsis of your life, but like how you got to where you are now? Because we met through your publication, Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe just go for it.
Biographical information.
Yeah. From
Well,
day one.
Yeah, I grew up in San Diego, and my friends and I ran a weekly paper in town called Fahrenheit San Diego, and it went for about a year and a half. It was really popular, but our publisher was kind of, I don't want to talk shit, but he was kind of a lunatic and like sort of a dick, and we had to everybody had to get out because we were just like so stressed out all the time.
Weird.
And like people would yell at us all. It was like, he
So-
was like a traditional like news publisher that like Spider-Man's boss, like J. Jonah Jameson, right? Is that his name?
I don't know.
Kind of
Yeah.
like that, like Spider-Man's boss, and like Spider-Man hates his boss, and
But so it was like pretty ahead of its time, I think.
it worked out. If we had a different guy publishing us, I mean, it probably would have been a lot. We'd probably be still doing it, maybe.
I remember everyone was kind of psyched because it was like the first time that was like our world or like our community was like, it wasn't like, San Diego Reader and City Beat, and I mean both the Reader and San Diego City Beat and the Reader touch upon stuff, but it's very general, and this was like, it seemed very specific to like more underground culture and like
100%.
social politics and stuff. So
We hated the Reader and City Beat.
Yeah.
I think the City Beat's gotten a lot better in recent years.
yeah,
I think the Reader's still not as great, but I don't know.
people have infiltrated, like the bassist for Bobby Bray's band Innis works there, and
Chad.
Chad,
Yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah.
So it's cool to have like someone from our team.
Yeah, I've noticed that. Yeah, they've done some cool stuff lately, but both of them were just dog shit.
So
Back
why
when we
did you end
started.
up? Oh yeah, of course.
And that's why we started it, because we were like, Jesse and I had lived in Portland, and we loved the Portland Mercury. And
So you'd already lived in Portland and then moved to San Diego?
Yeah, I lived there for like 6 months.
Back and forth.
we came back right before 9/11, and then we're like, let's just stay here. Let's come back.
Wow.
And we wanted to do something that was more like good weekly papers that were like bringing the community together and actually covering cool stuff that wasn't just like what Slam or City Beat were covering, was just like Sprung
yeah.
Monkey and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, of
Unwritten
course.
Law.
Yeah, it like a slightly stupid kind of culture.
Cottonmouth King.
Yeah.
Bob it.
So you hated your publisher.
Well, we didn't hate him. He was just, he was like a kind of a troubled guy.
So why'd you stop? You just
We were
had
just
to stop
we were
because
just so stressed out.
it wasn't
we
worth it.
We had to pull the plug because everybody was getting ulcers and
wow, weird.
yeah.
Well, you needed that person apparently.
Because it was like cost like $10,000 a week, I think, to publish it.
Wow.
Because salary for everybody that was working there, and then the printing was really expensive.
Huh.
It was really expensive because we were doing like 40,000 copies.
I didn't realize it was that massive or
Yeah.
expensive.
Super expensive.
Wow, that's crazy.
And we didn't have anything. We didn't have any money.
Yeah. Yeah. Were you already like an established author at that point?
Not really. I mean, I'd done like a little bit of writing here and there. I mean, I was doing it all the time, but nobody knew that I was doing it.
Uh-huh.
You know.
What was your first thing that you published?
So I had this deal with myself that if anyone was ever interested in doing like a book of fiction by me, I would quit journalism and just do art writing, you know, like fiction and the songs and things like that. And so somebody in 2007 like offered to put out a book for me, and then I quit everything and just did that. That was called Him California.
Okay. So let me backtrack. Do you have any like any kind of writing education, or did you learn this somehow?
I had like a few mentors that kind of like helped me along the way. There were like people that worked for the magazines that I would work for, and like older people that would kind of push me around and tell me what to do. And
as far as writing?
Yeah.
Huh.
But mostly just from I read a lot.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's great. And then I remember. Okay, so you published your first book, and then you started doing music as well.
Yeah, I started doing them about the exact same time.
Okay.
And I was writing the book while my first Talking Songs record came out.
But you had moved out of San Diego at this point.
Yeah, I think I was living in Virginia while I was working on both of those, and I was there for like 6 months.
I remember you had left San Diego
and then went to Portland.
Fahrenheit was done, and you had sent me a CD, and I was like kind of enamored by it because it was strange to get the CD that like mentioned, you know, Golden Hill and like it was cool. Like
yeah, that was probably the first thing that I recorded.
Okay.
And then around that time I was like, if I want to do both of these things equal amounts of time, but it's kind of hard to shift between writing fiction and then doing these talking songs. So I was just like, I've got to combine them completely so the stories are all connected, the characters are all connected, and they're like two sides of the same thing basically. Okay. And that was the only way I could do it and do them both prolifically.
And you're still doing that, right?
Yeah.
Because last night the piece that you did, is it recorded?
The thing that I did with Demetrius?
Yeah.
We're gonna record it.
I mean, but you were speaking about characters from Locust House.
Yeah.
And so it's still like an ongoing
yeah, totally
thing.
And I kind of plan to always do it until I, die or get bored.
Uh-huh.
But
when you die or get bored, you're going to tell everybody who the people are, the real characters.
I'll put out a PDF you can download of people's names
to decode it.
Yeah, so I can't get sued, and then I'll get bored and die.
I have had a few discussions with Alicia Edwards about Cave World, and she's like, "Do you think this is so and so?" And do you like trying to like figure it out? And I'm like, I don't know. I just read it and take it as it is, and metaphorically, it's probably a lot of bunch of people, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's really fiction. Everybody that writes fiction brings people from their lives into it. So a lot of the characters are composites of like 10 different people.
Sure, totally.
Or
there's a couple people on
some of them are totally fictional. I mean, like beyond, there's no basis in reality in them.
Huh. Well, it's weird reading it because there's a couple characters that I'll read it and I'm pretty sure you're not talking about someone, but I'm like, oh, I know that exact like kind of human being, like that kind of like fucked up druggy punk dude, riding his bike. Like I kind of know, oh, that's so and so, but I don't think the person I'm thinking of, but so it's interesting. That's why I would try to tell Alicia, like, just take what you want from it and like enjoy it for what it is, But
yeah, I don't want people to have to think like decode shit while they're doing it, and that's probably just people that I know that are doing that, because then they're like, it's got to be somebody that I know. This has got to be somebody. But like anybody that doesn't know me is just going to be like, well, this is it's just a story.
Let's talk about some more of your work that you've done. If you so okay, you published your first book, you did some music.
Yeah.
Where did you kind of go from there?
Well, my first record came out in 2005, and then the book I was working on at the same time, but it took so long to get it published that it came out in 2008. So by that time, I was doing music like a lot and touring a lot. So I kind of went from not playing music and not touring to doing it like full time. Like I didn't even know how to play guitar yet. Oh. And I went on tour.
But you had a band though, right?
I had a backing band.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, I went as soon as the record came out. I had like UK tours and things like that. And then I did that for like probably 3 years, just constant touring and putting out other records. And then that book came out. And then now it's gotten to the point where I get and work on a book, and it takes me, a few years. And during that time, I kind of like slow down on making music. And then once the book comes out, I do more music. And
okay.
Because it's gotten to the point where like the books are like, they're I think they're like they're maybe getting better, so I'm like putting more into them.
Sure.
So it takes me longer to do them.
Yeah, and also maybe after you're done writing, you can kind of like breathe for a second.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it is for me too. Like, I mean, I guess for like putting out music, you would really record the record and then you can wait till the tour happens, or after you tour, wait. So there's like a in between spot. So you did tours in Europe and where else? Or
mostly just the UK,
okay.
and the US.
US, huh? And how did that go? Like as far as UK compared to the US?
The UK tours are really good. It's the weirdest thing because it all came down to this one bit of press that I got. When my first record came out, there was this web magazine that wrote this story that was like really well received, and because of it, like I got like a whole audience just from that one story that was like really widely read, and I got a record deal out there, and they basically set up all my tours for a while. And then after that label, I wasn't working with that label anymore. I just had an audience, so I just kept coming back.
Wow.
And I go like once or twice a year, and I think I'm going again in March.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like what you did last night then, I guess, at the...
So sometimes it's just me playing guitar and doing it, and sometimes it'll be me backed by a band.
Cool.
Depends on what kind of thing it is.
Sure.
So if it's like a festival, like an ATP festival, it'll be like full band.
Have you done that? ATP?
ATP, yeah.
Which one did you do?
The ones where you camp out in the...
Yeah, but who curated it?
That one wasn't curated. That was like, they were phasing out going to the, I can't remember what they call it.
Sands.
Yeah, that was the last one of that.
Okay.
So they like basically like they curated them themselves.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I'm always kind of fascinated by those, like to see like, oh, you played it, and who was the person that or who was the the band or the artist that chose.
And there was a lot of great bands, but it was just them like going like these are people we've had at festivals before, so they got like television. I can't even remember.
I remember
that, but
one.
It was really good.
Oh, that's great. That's cool.
I didn't get to see any of the bands because I was like on tour the day before.
Oh yeah, of course.
And like got there, played the show, and had to leave the next day.
Yeah. Okay, so you are like a secret hippie living on a farm.
I'm not a secret hippie.
Well, you're kind of like a punker, and then okay, so how did your farm life happen? Because I don't really understand it,
right.
And I'm kind of fascinated by it, and it's weird because I feel like it I feel like you're able to do all these things from a different perspective, a much different perspective than like what me or Luke are used to, so what, like, can you talk about how you went from, I don't know, like civilian life to farmland life, I guess? Or
well, this was about 7 years ago. The people that I was living with at the time, Jesse, who was the founder of Fahrenheit, and her partner at the time, we were all living in Portland, and Portland was kind of like becoming like the Portland you know now. It had its own TV show and all that stuff, and it was getting like more expensive and kind of obnoxious. And
I love that show, by the way.
I've never even seen it. I've never seen it.
The Danzig episode.
Is he actually on it?
Yeah, he's great. It's so good. Okay, go on.
And then we kind of like the idea of having land, and so we're like, well, let's just go to where there is land that's cheap. And we went out to Kansas, and I'm the only one that's left from that original group. They've gone to other places, and so it's me and my girlfriend Elizabeth, and we have 3 acres, and we have a bunch of rescue animals that we've taken in. We grow a lot of crops, a lot of food. We had a massive amount of garden this year, and we just do anything that anybody else would do in the city, but we do it out there in kind of social isolation.
No offense by this, but why? I mean, obviously, yeah, like you can, I guess, like politically, you avoid certain things, or you're like people live off the grid or whatever. I mean, I understand like why, but why? I mean,
well, one of the main reasons is I really like having a lot of land, and we only have 3 acres, which for a real country person is nothing. But like when you grow up in the city, like you've got those, it's great. You can just walk forever, and there's space. And you can do whatever you want. You can be as loud as you want. You can be as weird as you want. You can start fires, burn things, blow up things, and just have room to spread out and not have to answer to as many people as you'd have to answer. There's no like neighbors banging at your door because you're up all night or anything like that.
I mean, okay.
I like the freedom of to have a lot of space to roam, and just the peace of being out in the country. I mean, everybody knows how the tranquility of being in the country.
Sure.
And that's a big part of it.
But so then I want to know about the rescue animals, but then also I know like you were telling me about like some of the crazy weather conditions and stuff. I mean, that seems like a lot to take on. You know, like with the animals specifically. So I don't know, how did you become like a farm sanctuary, I guess, or animal sanctuary?
Well, we're not like an official animal sanctuary or anything like that. We just took in animals. And
where do you get them? Or like, how do you take them in? I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Right. They all come from different sources. When you live in the country and you have like one animal, some people come by and they'll be like, I've got a goat that I don't want anymore. Will you take it off my hands or something like that? Or
and you're just like, sure, I'm gonna take a goat.
Yeah. So the original ones, we had 2 sheep, and Jessie, when she was living there, basically bought them from a slaughterhouse and brought them in, and then slowly we started adding more things. And we've had other ones that we've adopted out over the years. Got some dogs. That one of them was a hurricane survivor, and we're not really actively taking on rescues or anything like that.
Yeah.
We could, but it's a lot of work.
Sure.
So we just have, like, Elizabeth and I have this small little group, and, try to give them the best life they can.
Yeah.
And, it's nice to have chickens running around and to be around animals.
Sure.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not nice, it's a lot. It can be a lot of work.
Yeah.
Or it can be completely chill. It's like sometimes you're just fixing fences constantly, and you're like dealing with sick animals, and sometimes you'll go for months and months where they're just peaceable and everybody likes everybody. And,
Well, you mean there's like, what kind of conflict do you deal with?
Animals that escape, like animal escape artists. We have got this dog that can like jump over walls, and like he's like a superhero. You'll see him like jump over buildings and stuff. It is amazing. It's not great. So that, or the chickens will start little warring factions that they'll decide they don't like a certain group of chickens, and they'll go to war with them and stuff like that.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be probably interesting stuff to kind of observe and reflect on and use like for writing or something as well.
Yeah.
It's interesting how that works. All right, so what about, how did Locust House come into play?
I don't remember.
I mean,
Well, we talked about doing books with 3-1G and Pioneers Press, and that's where it started.
Okay.
Because we were like, let's do something that like really brings the two together, as and that's what that was. It was like from the same world as 3-1G stuff.
Sure.
Seems like a long time ago, but I guess it was just like a couple years ago.
Wasn't that? Yeah, I don't think it's that long ago. But it seems like all the things that you write about are not from like a farmer's perspective, which is really kind of interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't really feel like a farmer.
But I mean, even at the Zine Fest, you were selling like patches and stickers that said "Farmers Against Fascism."
That's true.
But I mean, I get the like sort of like, not to dumb it down, but like the shtick, or like the not that it's a gimmick, because you farm and you're against fascism, so you're legitimate. Right. But like, because I was like, we're in San Diego, like, in Balboa Park, and there's like people like interested in farmers against fascists, and it's like, I'm trying to like think like, who is that person taking that? Like, are they a farmer? Or like, it seems like your perspective is from you have like, there's these two worlds, I guess.
Yeah.
When I think about you, I think of like, I don't know. Yeah, I kind of think of it's interesting.
Well, I'm definitely not writing about
farmland
or my life out there.
Yeah.
And I might someday. I've got the idea of what I want to write about, and it's kind of this, the storyline's already been set, and it takes place in my hometown, which I know better than other places.
Yeah.
And I kind of try not to write about myself very much, even if I put myself into some of the characters.
Yeah.
I mean, someday maybe I'll write like, a farming novel, but
or like an autobiography or something.
Yeah, or something like that.
That would be pretty fascinating.
And some of my characters have had like country backgrounds a little bit, or they've grown up rural, and that'll probably be more of a thing in future books, just because now I know about that stuff, so I can talk about it. Okay. Yeah. But I mean, I still feel like the same person that lived here.
It's weird when I see you on tour, because you have a different like sort of air to yourself. Like, I feel like you've come off of a vacation from like another planet. Like, I'm like, welcome back to this shitty place, at this like hardcore show in like in a crummy city,
Huh.
And then and then I kind of think like, he's gonna drive off and go to this like very peaceful, like sort of like I don't know, different, totally different like energy. You know, like I don't know, it's weird. It's to me, in knowing like your world, I that's what I think about. It's a trip.
Well, I've been there for 7 years. I mean, I guess that's a lot of time. Puts a stamp on you and changes you. You know?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a happier person.
Okay, so can we talk a little about Locust House?
Yeah.
So, for one, I struggled with it, you calling it Locust House, because we never really called it that.
Right.
But I get why I mean, it's your book, and I understand why you wanted to call it that. But I guess I kind of struggled with it because, like, it wasn't really, like, so it was, like, the duplex, and there was a third house in the back. The only other Locust, well, I guess Jimmy Lavelle was in the Locust at one point, and he did live downstairs, and Bobby did live in the back house.
Yeah.
But it wasn't ever, like, the Locust House. Or,
Yeah.
Two others. I didn't, before we even met, I've always heard of the Locust House. That's what a lot of people
I think it's
called it,
probably
too.
to people that, because I mean, I didn't know you back then, and I think a lot of people that I knew didn't as well, and it was just like that's what a lot of people would call it. I'd never heard the Avocado Club before.
Avocado 500 Club.
Yeah.
And then there was just Golden Hill House. But because for a while, like all the Tristeza people lived downstairs, and they were doing more shows than we were, and it was kind of like the Tristeza House, you know.
Right.
But it's still like the same structure or whatever. But it's an interesting thing because, so you were like, I'm gonna write this story in Locust House, and I was like, it's not. That's not what it was called. And then I got the book or the manuscript, and I read it, and I was like, wow, it's like not really about the bands or even about the house, you know. And it was like a strange kind of like, I don't know. Maybe you can explain like why, but
I kind of wanted it to be anchored by that, but more about what it felt like for the people that lived in that time.
Sure.
And sort of, because that's what, you know, there's a bunch of different characters in the book, and you get their perspectives, and I wanted to like kind of harness like what I felt at that time and put it into all these different characters, and sort of show how things felt, at least for me. And
because it was weird because I thought there's so much culture about San Diego, and it was there only a couple little references to like the bands that played and that one night of the show that, you know, kind of like sort of like built around or whatever. But like it for the most part, I remember just like reading it and kind of just like feeling like noticing all these other elements that are not musical and not punk and not you know, things that are like our world or whatever, you know. Like, but it was just really San Diego, like almost like it would be really appropriate to have it in like a cultural studies book or a class or something, you know, like if someone was like trying to learn about a certain kind of culture or something, you know. And it was weird because, you know, it dealt with substance abuse and it dealt with domestic violence and all these different things, you know, that like I think are very real and but it kind of like honed in on like a really interesting community, I guess, the community that we were all part of, you know. I don't know. It was weird. I mean, in a good way, but like it was weird to like even like how earlier before we started the podcast, we were talking about JC's Market and like thinking about like that market and it was such a San Diego thing, like those kind of places and like the way that it smelled and what they sold and, you know, and it was just interesting because then I think like, what if someone picks us up because they're like, oh, I like the Locust, or like I heard the Blood Brothers are in this, you know, book or something, and then they're like reading about like horchata and shit, you know, and it's like a different thing that people.
Well, I'm not a music writer. I've done it in the past, but I'm not. I don't know if I could have written a book that was just about music.
Sure.
And I don't know if I'd be interested enough. I'm more interested in the people. Whether they're the people in the bands or the people that are coming to the shows or just the guy that sells corn by 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
And the neighborhood was a big part of it. You know, I wanted to write sort of a love letter to what Golden Hill felt like at that time.
Sure. It's weird too because it was, I mean, we're responsible for it, I guess. Like, you know, we were all like the poor punks, and where do we live? And you know, we live in the ghettos, and then that's the first sign of attraction, like, oh, there's these artists or these weirdos, and then like gentrification is like right behind, you know. It was weird getting pushed out of that community, you know. I fucking would love to live there again. Like anytime I go drive through there, I'm like, God, it'd be great to be able to live here. again.
And it still looks about the same, but it's glossy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
I
shitty.
loved it, and it's just like everything got smoother and prettier and more expensive. And
Yeah. It's a trip though, because I think about this, and it's hard like maybe discussing this with someone that's so when I first moved in there, it was maybe the first week or something. I moved in there with a couple other people, and my roommate Aaron Richards, him and his girlfriend, he was an Antioch Arrow. Him and his girlfriend lived there, and the first week, I guess, they got jumped on our front lawn, like in the grass, by these cholos, and they were trying to steal her camera from her. And it was like, that would not ever happen anymore. You know, I mean, there's probably still cholos and stuff, but they're not going to go like jump you on your front lawn, you know?
Right.
And it was crazy too, because there was there was like the 2 rehab houses across the street, and occasionally we would see our friends go there, you know, and it was just like a fucking weird thing. And then, you know, when we got booted out of there, when the landlord sold it and the new person wanted us out, you know, I think they sold the property, which is the three units or whatever, for $600,000, which is insanely cheap for San Diego. You know, even at that time it was cheap, but for us when we were in our early 20s, you know, $600 is a lot, let alone $600,000. You know, but I mean, I'm sure it's worth over a million easily now. Which is crazy to think about, like all the shit that went on there, like, you know, people shooting heroin and people like setting shit on fire, and like the fights and the cops and like, you know, all the sketchy shit, like, you know, waking up and there's like people that have like took a bunch of NyQuil or you know, cough syrup and vomited all over the carpet, you know, we have to rip the carpet out, you know, it's like, and now it's like $1 million home, you know, it's weird to see that.
Like the ghost of the punk house.
Sort of,
there, yeah.
I've gone back and I gave the new owner of the book, you know, and it's weird because she remembered my name, and I was like, it's been a long time, and she's like, Justin, you know, and you know, I gave her the book, and she was psyched, and I mean, she knew that when they sold the house, the night of that last show that we had, she said she drove by and like she saw like probably 400 people outside, you know, and like knew, and
firecrackers.
You know, there was nothing she could really do. Yeah. There's, I mean, we threw the couch off the roof, you know, like it was bad. So I mean, but so like when I read it, it didn't seem about like, I thought it was gonna be more about like the debauchery that surrounded the house, but it was more about like San Diego culture.
Yeah.
Why did you take that angle? I guess.
I don't know. I felt like it'd be too easy to write about all like the crazy shit that happens. You know, anybody can do that, but I wanted to make it more like, the culture of San Diego, which is a weird culture. You know, especially for someone who grew up here, this weird like fancy beach town, and then the strange art that comes as a reaction to that, which is one reason I always liked that community, because I grew up at the beach, and I was always kind of dissatisfied with like the bro life, you know. I just never felt at home. And then when there was like something that was like dark and churning and like crazy and brutal and weird, like, and just different, it felt like a good reaction. It felt like the proper reaction to living in this like conservative beach community.
So before you like became who you are and like the things that you're into, what, like when you were like normal, you know, in the beach community, like what was like the first thing that would like bring you in, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, probably just going to the Che with friends. I didn't even know what it was at the time, but I had friends that were a little bit cooler than me. None of us were cool at all, but they'd be like, "There's this band at the Che, let's go see it."
And that's the point. No
one
was cool. So like, that's where we were all supposed to go. So who was it that you saw?
Oh, I don't even remember. It might have been like a Che Fest or something like that.
I mean, was there something that you were like, "This is my home"? You know?
Well, the first time I saw the Locust was a big one. That's in Locust House. You know,
okay.
One of the characters talks about that. You know, that character that's just me autobiographically that's talking about that. So I wanted to show like that's how that was. And I don't even remember a lot of the shows. I just remember a general feeling of being there and being like, whoa, this is totally different than anything I've ever seen, and it speaks to me. And there was like quite a few shows. I think mostly it was when Ezra was booking.
Oh yeah.
And he was booking really good stuff.
Oh yeah. And it was, I mean, there was so much stuff happening at that point too.
Yeah. And it felt like almost every night that I went there was something that was like kind of changed me a little bit. And from a variety of different things. It wasn't always like even a San Diego band. sometimes it was just some weirdos from out of town.
Yeah, that was the thing too. I remember like going to the Che in a pretty young age, and I'd like sort of become acquaintances with the band Heroin, and I remember like, oh, they're playing at the Che, and we went, and it was like spaghetti all you can eat, and then there was like a 3-piece jazz band, and then Heroin, and I was like, God, that's weird, and that probably would never happen anywhere else, you know, like who would think to put like the spaghetti and the jazz band with the hardcore band, you know, like,
Yeah.
but it didn't phase anyone, you know. But yeah, so that's crazy. So that's what reeled you in, and then I mean, you felt like you've found your home, I suppose. But then why would you want to leave it and go, you know, to?
Well, I mean, it was a while before I left it, and at that point I was in like my mid-20s, and things were changing, and a lot of my friends had all left. People were all moving to Portland or Chicago or places like that. And then when the magazine went down, I wanted a restart, you know.
Sure.
It just didn't feel right being there anymore. It didn't have a source of income at all. Couldn't afford my apartment in Golden Hill.
Yeah, because the gentrification started.
Yeah, it was already getting a little expensive at that point.
Yeah.
And I was on 25th and Broadway.
Yeah.
In a pretty nice place.
Sure, I remember.
Yeah. Those little courtyard apartments.
Yep, I think photographer Rich Cook lives in that same complex now.
Okay.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, a bunch of people were living there at that time. It was a great little thing.
Yeah, when it was cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, that's what happened with the whole complex that we lived in. It was always like, it was never like a normal tenant in any of those buildings, you know.
Yeah.
And it even like migrated into like other, like there's the Locust House, and you know, and then there's apartments next door to it. I mean, at one point there was like other people that we knew that were like part of our world living in the next complex, and then across the street there was it started taking over at Golden Hill, which I think might have been the sort of like, I mean, everybody from like Run for Your Fucking Life lived in that area too and stuff, and it was kind of just like sort of taking over.
Yeah, there was a while when it was like everybody that I knew lived in that neighborhood in a 3-block radius.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. So I guess I'm trying to like go in like this like sort of linear perspective, but let's talk about what you're doing now then, because what was the last thing you published? Locust House?
Yeah.
And now you're working on more music.
Yeah, so I'm recording today and tomorrow, and just probably doing like an EP.
Are you releasing it yourself?
I have no idea. We don't even know what it's gonna. I mean,
yeah,
it's so early in the game. It's a bunch of the stuff is written. We have an idea where we want it to be like really heavy, dark drones and kind of like a little apocalypto, kind of feel like 2017, sort of a reaction to like what America's felt like recently, and so it's not going to be as like gentle as past recordings have been. It's going to be kind of screechy and a lot of feedback, and
there was a little
dark.
Like last night, there was a little Bastard Noise-ish kind of feel happening here and there.
Yeah, it's kind of going to go in that direction.
Yeah,
I think.
Wow, that's great. I wonder if that'll alienate some of your fans.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, it was interesting yesterday too at the Zine Fest, like kind of watching you interact with people that were fans of your writing, and I sorry, but I would judge them a little bit. You know, like, I mean, I can't help it. I'm like looking at them going like, God, do they really know like some of the sketchy shit that he's like involved in, or like, you know, like comes from, you know, like you know, and I would like, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I shouldn't judge people like that, and I hate that I do, but I just wonder like, do they understand the like validity of like, you know, the characters or like the community or whatever, like in like Locust House? But maybe that's what draws them to it, or maybe there is something that they can relate to, because they do feel like, you know, the alienated characters in some of the books that you write and stuff. But I do wonder like what their lives are like, I suppose, the people that are buying your stuff.
I mean, I can't even guess.
Yeah,
you know, I meet a lot of them, and they just come from all walks of life.
Yeah,
and some of them like certain things, and some of them, like, some people will read my books and they don't understand the music at all. I mean most people, I would say, get the books versus like music, because it's kind of a weirder concept. There's like when I explain it to people, generally they're like, I don't understand what you're talking about. Like there's you don't sing, you talk. And then there's music. To me, it wasn't weird or anything, because like I liked a lot of music that didn't have singing; it had screaming, and that just seems like just different kind of vocals.
So you're talking about people that like pick up your music,
people that read the books and then they've heard about my music and they're just like, I don't even want to go there because that just seems don't get it.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't get the
because
concept.
it's so avant-garde in a general perspective, I guess.
To me, it doesn't seem that way, but I think to people they're used to.
If you like only listen to pop music and you
or even like indie rock or something.
Sure,
you
yeah.
be like, what the?
Yeah, I mean that's
this?
still sort of like mainstream-ish.
Yeah.
You know? I mean it's not something that you could. There's no chorus and a verse, and you know like the beat is off or whatever it is, you know.
Right.
So, but it would be more like an artist kind of like thing than like a musician's thing, I suppose.
Yeah, and I feel like people that are into art, like people that go to galleries and stuff, they always get it because they're used to like thinking outside of the certain lines that music has to be a certain thing. So they'll be like, oh well, yeah, I'll give this a chance and see where it goes.
I hate labels and shit, but like people always say like, oh, what do what is your job? And I hate saying musician because I don't know how to read music or anything, and I mean I guess I am a musician, but I also do things like like other stuff, and it's all kind of to me related, so I would just like avoid it. But I would just say I'm an artist, but that sounds a little douchey to say that too, but it is the truest sense because music is art, like you're saying. Like your music is art and your writing is art and spray paint on the wall is art, so it's really like a general definition or label, but like what would you say?
Right. I mean, I'm exactly the same way where those two things that I'm doing are such equal parts and interchangeable to me. Like I have a hard time saying writer or musician, even though I'm doing both of those things. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I've been interested in art all my life. I used to draw as a kid and stuff like that. So I do consider myself an artist, and it feels fucking weird saying it. Uh-huh. And I hardly ever say it because people are like, oh, so that means you paint, right? No, not really, but it's like it's making art. And for a while, I didn't I stopped even telling people that I was a writer because I didn't feel like one. Huh. I've got these things that they feel like the same exact thing to me. To other people, maybe not so much, but.
So if you say writer, what would they think? Like you write like, I mean, you are a writer.
I am.
So like,
yeah.
What would they like assume that you were?
I don't know what people assume.
Yeah.
But it just felt weird. It felt weird for me to like say that because then it meant I wasn't the other thing. But I don't know. I feel like sometimes I kind of have to like give things context and stick them together for me to do them and to understand them. I like to have things be on a certain line and make sense so I can do it. But you can be a writer and a musician and have them separate. Lots of people do that.
So your resume would say writer and musician. And we were talking about resumes earlier with the pizza eating contest.
I don't. I try to just stay away from having to tell people about that.
Yeah.
To define it.
It's good too. I always people always ask, "Oh, what kind of music do you play?" And I've come to the easy way of just saying annoying, and it always gets like a good reaction to me. A good reaction, like they laugh and they're like, "Oh, that's funny." Like, and I'm like, seriously, that's annoying. Or they think like, "What the hell just happened?" And then I get to walk away from the conversation. I don't have to tell them like a URL or some shit.
Yeah.
I can just bail and that's it. So I wonder if there's like a term for like a writer, or an author to say like what do you write? And you're just like, I don't know what the word would be, but they'd be like, what the fuck? And then they're just stumped, and you don't have to like deal with it anymore.
Right. Because I can't really explain my songs to people because nobody gets it. Sometimes I'll be like, I make like soundtracks for like voiceovers for movies that don't exist or something like that.
I mean, that's pretty accurate.
I've had that happen before, and people were like, oh, okay, I kind of get that. I don't get that the movies don't exist, but I understand that this is almost like a narration of a movie.
But you call it talking songs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's very accurate, I think.
And that's also partially because I fucking hate spoken word.
Yeah.
And I fucking hate it. And I hate the spoken word. It's just
I always think
such
of
dog shit. That like cadence, that like sing-songy cadence, na 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 na, makes me want to like put a nail in my head or something.
There's some cool shit though, like from
yeah,
the Beat Generation,
there's definitely
like
cool
really
stuff.
like radical, like sort of political spoken word stuff that I was always really. I mean, I guess I don't know, it's different because if you were a Black Panther, you're gonna have a different perspective of it. Or I don't know. I was gonna say something and I lost.
A lot of it for me was like the reaction where I knew that if I told somebody that I do spoken word, they would immediately think of a certain awful version of it.
Coffee shop.
Poet, all that type of stuff. And I didn't want anybody to think that way. And it was maybe like you shouldn't have to think about that type of stuff, but I was like very conscious about not wanting people to think about it in a certain way. And so that's where I came up with Talking Songs, because I wanted it to be its own thing, and I didn't want people to think of coffee shop poetry bullshit.
To me, like, some of the music kind of seems like a I don't know, like maybe like Moss Icon or something, you know?
Right.
Like, where there was a lot of just talking,
Yeah,
and
that's
there was no real structure with the lyrics, you know?
Yeah.
Or words or whatever, and it was talked, you know.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I mean, what do you think that, like, again, like, I understand your opposition, because okay, so your opposition to like spoken word is kind of like, I guess, would be like our opposition to like punk music, you know, like it's a lot of it's shitty now, and it's like not what you like. You can't say like punk and have it have like the legitimacy that it did in like the early 80s, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, if you're saying like, oh, I do spoken word, it's gonna be different. I bet you if you were in the 70s, like, you know, and like you're speaking out against like social injustices of that time, and you say I do spoken word, people are gonna have a totally different idea.
Yeah.
Like, here we are in another era.
Things change.
You know. But I mean, you do seem like very related to like beatnik culture, you know, like to me, like your persona and the context that you write about and the things that you do, the avant-garde sort of like approach to music and even writing, and then even the fact that you're like sort of involved in like strange, you know, subcultures like zine culture, you know, and like I don't know, like is that a accurate description, or is that offensive? I don't know.
No, I mean, it's not offensive. I think I read a lot of that stuff when I was younger, and I feel like I always liked the idea of what it was, but I didn't like a lot of the stuff.
Like what?
Like the books and the I didn't like a lot of the artists. I really liked the idea of who William Burroughs was, but I would never really felt his books that much.
Huh.
And I liked a couple of books by Kerouac, and I read all of them, but generally they didn't really do much for me. But I liked the idea of like what the Beat Generation seemed like to me. Seemed like a kind of a cool idea, and it was like a reaction to this like stuffy 50s and 40s mentality, and it was probably pretty powerful at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's different because the world was different, and they were rejecting and like developing different things than we would have to assess.
But I don't feel like I'm a part of that or like a descendant of that or anything.
Huh.
There's also like, I don't know, I don't feel, one of the weird things about the talking stuff is there's not a lot of people that do it. There's not a lot of it that I like. And I think it'd be kind of cool if there were other people doing the same thing, so I could feel like there was other people like that I respected doing it, you know?
Uh-huh.
So I could feel like there was some kind of movement or something, but I feel very like isolated in that. So you know, I definitely have friends in bands and stuff like that, and so I listen to their music. I don't really listen to anything spoken.
It's fascinating. I can't even
Moss
think of
Icon's
it.
a good one though. I didn't even think about that. That's like,
when I would put on Moss Icon records, I would be like, what the hell?
And I've thought about doing records like that where it's like louder, heavier,
but it's not
talking.
sung, and it's not there's no lyrical structure.
Yeah,
it's just a thing. If you know, I mean, I'm assuming he writes it out. Maybe it's free form.
Yeah,
I don't know. What can you think of stuff like that musically?
I know a few things, but it's not enough to where like, it's not like I've got a really close friend that's doing that. We're going on tour all the time. I just tour with bands that sing and like other bands. There's not a culture surrounding what I'm doing.
Folk, like maybe, but then you kind of teeter again, like with another like realm of.
I think that's kind of where folk came into play, like as the musicians, the songwriters themselves, writing the lyrics, were probably like writers, but wanted to merge into the music and found a way to sing, as opposed to I see you doing.
Yeah, I know a lot of people do that. I know that Richard Hell, the reason that he did the Voidoids was because he wanted to do poetry, but he knew that nobody would read his poetry because nobody really reads poetry or buys poetry books. So he's like, I'm going to put my writing into the Voidoids, and he made this like weird, style of lyrics, kind of surrealist and like indebted to the French symbolists and things like that.
Wow, so that's why he did that.
That's from what I've read, yeah.
Uh-huh. Do you ever think about that?
What?
Like really going? I mean, because you
singing?
never have a band.
Yeah, I mean, I have, and it's just, I've had a lot of trouble with having a band when it's like my name, and then the reviews all just talk about the lyrics. And then the people quit the bands because they're like, well, this is just about you.
So what if you did like what Richard Hell did, and you're like, I'm gonna start this band and call it this thing, and utilize.
And I've had that before, and it's still like the reviews still talk about the front person. Since it's like spoken, people talk less about the music, even if the music's really cool and there's like a lot going on. And it's always been, I've never been able to like keep something going together, like a touring thing that would last like a tour.
It's interesting. So what comes to mind is like someone like Zach Hill. I wonder how that would work out, because he obviously is into weird shit, and like very creative. Like maybe it wouldn't work because he's like pretty punishing with drumming or whatever. But it would be like, what would if you did something with him, like who are they gonna write about at that point? Like you have like these two.
If there was like a personality,
sure. Like it's not like you, the author, and then like these musicians kind of backing you. Even though if it's still a band, it's like you're still like the guy or whatever. You know? So it would be like if you had like this sort of not all-star, but like like these people that are all kind of established, and then we are a band and we do this thing, and
that would probably work a little bit better. The only time that's kind of worked for me, or having a band's worked for me, it wasn't really having a band, but a lot of the UK tours, all the UK tours that I've done have been with this band Youth Movies, and they would we did a record together and we would record together, and they would back me up for part of my set. But like everybody, they had like a bigger fan base than me, so people really knew them. So when we were playing it, everybody really considered it a collaboration. It wasn't like I didn't have like a backing band.
Okay.
So people knew these guys and they liked their records probably more than mine. So that worked pretty well. But it was, it's a band in the UK that I couldn't just like, tour with all the time. But that worked well, and it was always like everybody was happy and satisfied with what we were doing. There was no like ego problems or people feeling like they were left out.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but that's probably part of it. I like that kind of like superstar idea of having like a bunch of people that people already know,
established or whatever.
Yeah.
Huh. So so you're working on this new album.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're gonna do from there. You're working on new writing.
Yeah, I have a really big novel finished, and it's like I'm kind of like punching above my weight a little bit with it.
What do you mean by that?
Like I'm trying to do things that I don't know if I'm good enough to do yet. With the novel, it's really ambitious, and structurally, it's kind of like it's a tough structure that I'm doing. It's not like experimental tough, but it's like I'm trying to do a lot. So I wrote it, and I'm kind of I stopped looking at it back in maybe February, and I'm kind of giving it some time off, and then I'm gonna go back into it and see if I should actually be doing this.
When you're gonna go in the studio today, are you guys just gonna do the music and you'll write over that, or do you have?
So I wrote the lyrics completely out. I basically like came up with around the same size set of lyrics as what we did on our track.
Okay.
Like 25 minutes, half an hour, or something like that. I sent it to Demetrius, and we basically talked about like what we were interested in at the time, and what we wanted it to sound like. And so he's recorded a bunch of tracks already. It's basically like what you guys heard at the show last night. It's sort of like that.
Cool.
And he's got stuff recorded, and then that's like half of it's almost done. It's the basic tracks, and then I'm gonna record my vocals over that, and then we have the other half of the record has like kind of a little bit of a different tone.
It's really strange though to think about it, because we kind of struggled with it, because when the way you read, if you give someone your vocals, there's dynamic in it, and there's certain elements, and so you can't really have like a musical structure applied to it, because if you're building,
I'm not in time.
You're not in time, and then there's certain times where you'll drop down in voice, and then it'll come back up a bit and get big again, and it's like, wow, we lost the vocal there, and so we were trying to approach it like just completely, just sonically, not musical, but just like add this swell and then have this like, jangly chain sound or like whatever, like something. So there was no music.
It almost becomes more like Foley or something like that.
I had to break away from the way my mind works just to get the concept of doing that, and then with him, it was all of like his suggestions and stuff
Like,
didn't make sense until I stepped back from it, or when, to be honest, it didn't make sense to me until like we were getting around to the end of it, when we were finalizing everything. Then I'm like, oh, I fucking get it.
Yeah,
I see it now, but I struggled with it a lot.
And I've never done one like that where it's just like sending somebody
the stuff.
25 minutes
Yeah.
worth of vocals. Usually, like with my things, they're all about 3 minutes long, and I write like try to make a little catchy little riff, and then I talk over it. And
Sure.
But that was the first time I've ever done it like that.
It's
And-
funny because a lot of the talking stuff that I would reference, again, is like sort of like protest stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So there's aggression to it, and the whole piece. Let's say it's like a 3-minute piece, is just someone pissed with aggression, and there's energy in the voice, so that you have like all this dynamic in the you know.
Especially that one piece that we all did together, because it's just like it goes everywhere.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, it goes through day and night.
Yeah.
And,
We were trying to find the breaks in it, you know, like
Yeah.
where's the mood gonna change? Like when does the story kind of like, or like you're pausing, you know, and like what do you do in the pause? Like do you play or do you stop and let it be a new thing when the next word?
And it's not like you can even play like a chord, because like the changes happen so fast.
Right.
It's just for like free jazz at that point.
I think Gabe played the guitar chords on it. I love how like it went to the beach a couple of times, and then like when the little birds, and then I think there's that part where the guitar comes in. I think those were Gabe's chords.
Yeah,
I'm almost
he
sure.
played the guitar. Yeah, it was like pretty sparse though, you know.
Yeah.
But another thing that I was thinking too is like, what about like all the early Bastard Noise stuff, like the Our Earth's Blood material? Again, there is like dynamic in some of the vocals that, you know, Wood would do, where it would come down, but it would still have this like creepy vibe. But it always like kind of like crescendoed, you know, so you knew where it was going. And then again too, like I think whoever was playing on those Our Earth's Blood records were probably with, you know, like in the same studio.
Yeah, and that's the challenge that we had, where you guys could have written the music first, and then I could have come in, and it'd been easier.
Totally.
Yeah, it'd been a totally different thing.
Shit, maybe we gotta do that then.
Yeah, we can do that. We'll do that next time.
Okay.
And I think we came up with something that's like, it's very interesting, and it sounds nothing like any of my other tracks.
Yeah.
And the people that my friends or my audience that doesn't like the more traditional things really liked that one, because they were like, this is like completely outside of guitar chords. And like,
I mean, I think our point was to like utilize what you're saying and put the listener into that, like, you know, like we were referencing like you know, like NPR like shows,
like a podcast, right? You were talking about that
podcast, you know, like or like you know, This American Life or something, where you listen to it and you're like, oh my gosh, like they're doing dishes and you can hear the dishes, or you know, whatever, or something simple like that, or the dog's barking. So
we had like traffic noise, in the beginning, and the beach, sounds, But
then there was other elements like that you would, you know, maybe reference, like Bastard Noise stuff, like piercing, like kind of like glitchy, you know, which makes you uneasy, like and it would go with the dialogue, you know, and you're just like,
And this thing that we're going to be recording in the next couple of days is going to be more like that.
Yeah,
it's going to be a little sharper and harsher, and I'm really excited about that.
Cool.
And more aggressive, because it's, you know, it's been a pretty crazy year.
it definitely has.
Yeah, this is like the Trump era record statement about the dog shit of the last year.
That's good.
So there you have it. That was the Adam Gnade podcast with Planet B. So be sure to check out the Planet B collaboration with Adam Gnade. Life is the meat grinder that sucks in all things. It's available from 31g.com. And also check out Adam's books, which are all available at pioneerspress.com.
Planet B.